All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Flight 325, Zero to Cloud. Your flight time today is about an hour and 15 minutes, and you've got two pilots on board who are going to take you through this journey. I'm Ani, Senior Test Lead at Microsoft, SCVMM, and my friend and colleague, Karim Hanif, also with SCVMM. So how many of you guys were able to go attend Brad's opening keynote? Show of hands.
Almost everyone.
Almost the whole room. Great. And so you must be really excited about seeing that demo. Now, as you sit down, and I want you to reflect back on those demos and see how powerful it was to create a cloud from these raw resources, to be able to allocate capacity, to be able to assign them to users, and to be able to use them. Today in this session, we are going to basically deep dive into it and show you how it can all be done. So at the bottom, through this session, we'll be playing a couple of roles. Karim here will be the Fabric administrator. I myself will be playing the role of a delegated administrator and a self-service user. And what we'll do is, we're going to start as a Fabric administrator, because they really get your data center together at the bottom level, which is they take care of, they get the diverse hardware from storage, networking, your load balancers, your server racks, wire them all together, power them together, put them on isolated networks, what have you. But they, in their mind, are creating a network, a capacity for you, which can then be used logically and can be basically assigned on top of it to create host groups in System Center. And those logical constructs can then be given names like production or development, or you could have gold storage, which can only be assigned to production, or you could have your development clouds. And these part of structure the Fabric administrator creates and then assigns a delegated admin to it. A delegated admin, when he comes along, he looks at what is assigned to him and is able to carve out clouds out of that. Clouds is a further layer of abstraction on top of these host groups and resources, so that even the host level information is made invisible to the end user. Now these clouds can then also be further assigned and further carved for specific user roles and user groups. And the users inside them can be given specific quotas and can be assigned some capacity on what they can do and cannot do. The fine level of control is given there at that level. These users can then go create these services and can deploy them, can run them. So this is basically the kind of workflow we'll follow through in this session. And with that, we're going to jump straight into a demo, and Karim is going to take you along from there.
Hi, everyone. So when we were designing this session, we said, this is the last session of the conference, and we wanted to make it like lots of demos. So we have lots of demos, and we will, our idea was, let's just go through this end to end. And as you all been into Brad's session, we actually showed this to you there. And then we had Ryan's session, Ryan O'Hara's session. Who have been there? How we actually did we actually showed how we actually constructed the demo. Not a lot of people. So the idea about this session is we're actually going to go deeper than that. I am planning to show you how to actually do some things that are not visible in the UI. You can only do it in the command line. And show you really some details about the bare metal provisioning process as well. But to prove you that we actually have lots of demos, I'm actually going to start with a demo. And in this demo, actually, I wanted to show you one thing. So in this basically demo, first I want to kick off the bare metal deployment because it takes around 35 minutes in this rack. So I actually right away want to jump on it, and then I will fly through the wizard and then come back to this and then explain. But I just want to kick this off as soon as possible. So here is the VMM UI, and in order to kick the bare metal provisioning, you basically add a resource, and this is basically, and then you select the physical computer. I will explain all this like later on, but let me just kick this off real fast. 192, 68, 1, 2, 3. Now we talk to the BMC of the server. We select the host profile. 3, and that's it. Okay. Now let's come back. Okay, so basically I just kicked off a bare metal provisioning job. What happens behind the scenes, like when this job is going through, is that here are the environment that you need to have basically for this to happen. So you need to have like VMM server. When you install VMM server, it comes with Windows Automated Installation Kit Wake. It's actually just it's a prerequisite. You cannot download it without it, and it includes like all the information that we need. The WinP, like boot image, and all of these actually come inside the Wake. That's why we require it. So you install VMM, and after that, what you need to do is you need to have a Windows Deployment Services role in Windows. You need to enable that in any of the Windows machines that you have. And this, once you enable this role, it asks you for a very simple configuration at first in order to start it. So you need to go through that, but you don't need to do anything on the WDS server after that. You just, basically install the role. I think it's a feature, and then finish the configuration. It asks you, I think the configuration, it asks you where do you want me to keep the images and folder names, and that's it, like a very simple configuration, and that's all you need to do. It requires a DHCP server because like you're PXE booting, so there needs to be a PXE server in the environment. And the next step you do is like you go to the VMM server, and you go to our add resources wizard, like where I was, and instead of adding a host, you basically add a PXE server, and you provide the name of the PXE WDS server that you just configured. And when you do that, in the background, what happens is VMM goes to and talks to that WDS server. It installs an agent, as if like you're just adding a host to VMM. It basically does the same thing. It installs a VMM agent on that WDS server, and then creates this folder under the WDS server. The good thing about like this whole thing is that you don't need to do any configuration on the WDS server. You don't need to add a boot image. You don't need to add any other images there. So we handle everything once you actually add the WDS server to VMM. We basically create this folder, and this folder is created generally under the, like whatever you selected, and by default it's remote installed. The WDS selects that folder by default. And we create that DCMGR folder. The reason why I'm mentioning this is if you're actually watching the bare metal, PXE boot on a, let's say, ILO screen or something like that, and you see that the machine just got booted, by the PXE server, and if you see the images being downloaded from DCMGR folder, then you know that it's the VMM that is doing the job. So that's why I wanted to mention that in here. And then what we do is we look at the Wake, and we find the boot image that like the Wake like has. This is the vanilla image. Basically, it's not customized, and we customize an image. We actually put our small, like we have a small agent, footprinted agent, like WinP agent. We put it in there, and we put our certificate there, and then we basically publish that to WDS server. So all this is like happens in the background. You just like go to the wizard and you just add. I just wanted to give you details of what happens in the background. So now that you have your DHCP server, your WDS server, your VMM server, when the VMM server is installed, it has a library too. And in this library, you basically have your VHD, because all this bare metal provisioning process is actually a boot from VHD operation. So you need to provide a VHD. You need to have a VHD that you want to boot from in the library, in the VMM library. And then you use basically this new concept of a host profile. This is just new in VMM 2012. You basically provide all this information in the host profile. You say, okay, I want this to be using this VHD, boot from this VHD, use this VHD. You know what, just use this, OS configuration. Here's my CD key. All of these information are in the host profile. And then you can also even say, you know what, I want the plug and play to find all my drivers. Once the machine is up and running, I want the plug and play to find it. Or you can just also say, no, plug and play doesn't know this hardware, like it cannot find, I know that it cannot find it. Here are the drivers. You can actually also, there's a way to actually provide the drivers too. So it's quite, like good, like information that you provide there. So what happens is, like you basically, this is exactly what I did. I kicked off the OST process. We call it OS deployment. That's the acronym for it. And it out of band reboots, tries to reboot that machine. And it talks to the Pixie server in order to do that. And the Pixie server says, do you authorize this? And we actually then check the certificate there. Oh, it's coming from us? Is this the WinP image that we customized and like sent to the WDS server? If it is, then we say yes. Just go ahead and boot. And we basically, and WDS then goes under that DCMGR folder and then pushes that image that we just customized to the bare metal server. Then it boots in WinP environment, right? And in the WinP environment, there are a couple of things you can do. Actually, like one of the demos that I'm going to show is like how to actually run a script during WinP process, like Windows pre-boot execution process, when it's up and running. What you can do at that point is maybe you want to, like mirror your local drives, or you can, firmware upgrades. All of these things you can actually do before. So I'm going to show you that it can only be done with a script. I will actually share the script in the PPT. So when you have the PowerPoint presentation, you have the example script there too. And when it's done, configuring all your scripts, and then it starts downloading the VHD that you provided in the host profile. If you have provided any drivers, it will inject those drivers. And then it talks to the domain. This domain information you also provide in the host profile, and customizes it, and then joins the domain. Then installs the VMM agent on now the OS is up and running. Now the VHD is up and running. It installs the VMM agent and enables Hyper-V role and takes that all into VMM, and it's done. Then the next step is, let's say you want to now do, like, this is my third and last demo, is like you maybe want to do NIC teaming. Because you need OS to be able to do those things, right? So you can run, it's called invoke command, so you can actually invoke a script on the machine. So here is what the deck looks like. So in the deck, I actually provided all this information there. So all the scripts examples are in the deck. So let's go through and show you how we can do this. Okay, so I'm using the Windows PowerShell ISE. So it's a nice UI to actually go and run scripts, and it's you can add it as a feature to Windows 2008. I don't think in SP1 I think it comes installed by default, but in 2008 you need to add it as a feature. But it's a very nice UI. So one thing that I wanted to show you in this demo is how do you actually, we actually talked about like how VMM customizes the WinP image, but what if you want to customize the WinP image? Let's say you have a driver, network driver, for example, that, like WinP doesn't have, and, it's useless if you cannot, like provide the network driver. So this is an example to show you how to actually customize the VMP and then publish it to WDS like VMM does. So first thing that you need to do is basically provide the location of the vanilla. This is basically coming from the Windows 8, Windows Automated Installation Kit. So let's just run this. And in here, what I'm going to say is just go ahead and, oh, actually, I forgot to do something. I'm sorry. So let me go back to my library, because I didn't actually provide the tag for the for this to actually take. So let me start over. So you actually want to provide the drivers to inject the driver to the VMP image. But how does the VMM know which driver to inject, right? So what you do is, you need to go ahead and get the drivers that you want to project. This is the VMM library. You go ahead and you create this folder, and I just went ahead and got the Broadcom drivers. I extracted the whole thing to VMM library, then came to VMM library and did a refresh in here. And what it did is it actually went to that, you see this directory, it got this directory, it found the drivers and identified the drivers as like a driver package and provided them to me in the library. So the only thing that I need to do in here is, like, let's say this is the driver that I want to inject. I actually go ahead and tag it with a custom name. You can just give whatever you want. So this is, I'm just saying WinP, right? Then you need to go back to the script, because it's going to ask me, the second question that it's asked me is, what is the tag? So I just run this, sorry. I just run this, and what I'm saying in here is that this is the WinP image that I want to use, right? And the driver tag that I want the script to find is WinPE. Then, what the script is doing is it's basically preparing the driver, and we basically use DISM to inject the driver to the WinP image. So this is basically preparing the directory for the DISM file, and then the next thing it's doing is that, like for every custom tag that you found in the library, then inject that to the WinP image. That's what it says in here. So as you can see, it's basically found the image that I provided. It's mounting that image. It's mounted the image. Now it's found one driver and matched it, and then it injected that driver to the image. Then I need to unmount it and publish it to WDS. So you can actually do this process however you want. Let's say you have your own WinP image, right? You can customize it however you want. You don't need to use this exact method that I used. But once you customize the WinP image, the important thing is that you publish it to VMM through VMM's like publish SC WinP commandlet. Because then, as I explained, we actually put our certificate, our WinP, like all of these things we basically handle in the background. So you can use whatever tool you want, but you need to use this, if you want to use that with VMM, you need to use this command to actually publish it. There's actually in the UI, there's a way to do that too. So once you do that, we have this section called WinP image, and there's an update WinP image. So this is the UI equivalent of the command that I just showed you. Okay, now that we have, this is one way to actually have a customized WinP image, other than, VMM created. So let me go back to the slides real fast. I just wanted to show you the next piece, and this is the one that we went through. So this is let's say now that you have WinP image that you customize, now you boot it to the WinP environment. Now you want, do a RAID configuration. You can actually run this, commands in the RAID configuration. Sorry, you can run RAID configuration. You can run, firmware updates, everything during this section. And I need to go through this in the script. So this actually is, there's currently a bug in VMM 2012, and we are taking this in the next cumulative update. But this actually doesn't work right now in VMM 2012. So that's why I wanted, but I just wanted to show you this so that exactly like how you can actually use the script and go through it once we actually have the update ready and available. So what you need to do in here is that you have this like an OS profile that the host profile that I just mentioned, right? So in this host profile, what you do is you basically provide the host profile to the script, and then add the location of your configuration file, like how you want to do like your RAID configuration. Like I did for Broadcom, example, you need to go to the whatever your hardware is. You need to find out there. For example, in this option is Dell. It was Dell hardware. And I went to their website, find out exactly what they use for their command line RAID configuration, tool is. And what I'm doing is I'm just providing that information in here and saying, you know what, go to Dell directory and run this command. This is basically what I'm running. Just do this actually deletes the RAID configuration. And then this actually adds the RAID configuration. This basically does a RAID 1. It does a mirror. This is another example of a. So we had two different hardware. We had HP and Dell, and Dell actually provided an option to include the directory in the WinPE. So that's why I actually in this example. I'm providing the local directory. But if you don't have this option, like some providers don't have that option, then you can actually say, you know what, the command that you want to run is in the VMM library. So you can actually say, here's my VMM server in the VMM library, and here's where you get this, in this case, it is RAID config.exe. So you can provide it, the network location too. So that's why I wanted to provide both scripts. So that one is for like a local, in WinPE, how you get it, and one is like through a VMM library. Okay. Now that you have the let's say now that you have everything up and running, what you can actually do is then do a NIC teaming, for example. So for this, I have this Dell machine that I have. I actually have this dual, Intel Pro cards. And in that Intel Pro card, I basically went ahead and provided in the script the way to, in here, this demo. So as you can see in this script again is in the PPT. What I'm providing is that just go ahead and run this like an executable, which is actually doing a NIC teaming basically. So I'm just going to run this here, and I will switch right to the Dell machine. And the reason why I'm actually doing an RDP, and the reason why it's not blocking is because I'm just using the other card to connect to, and this is like the different card. So as you can see, let's look at the job. So in this script, I actually have like an intentionally like failed it twice, and I'm succeeding on the last one. And the reason why I want to do that is I wanted to actually come and show you in here that we provide a really rich interface in the like if you, for example, run this and then if you hit an error, you can come to the jobs section and see why it failed. So we basically provide the same information there. In the first example in the script, I am providing a different output than what the script is required. So that's why it's basically saying, sorry, in the first one, I'm actually giving the wrong adapter number. That's why it's basically failed. And in the second one, I'm providing a wrong format, and it is basically failing because of that in here. So you can get this rich information in the script. And the last one is actually succeeded with a warning, but like the error code is 0, so you can see that the error code is 0. Lost the connection. Lost the connection to the HVDL, but we can see that at least it succeeded in the jobs view. So let's go back to the other demo rack. Okay, so far we basically went through the OSD process. I showed you different places where you can actually customize that process. And now let's say that you actually have this environment where you can actually now create a cluster, and like what you can do, like provide these infrastructure for ANI to use as a delegated admin afterwards. So we in VMM 2012 we also enabled the option to create a cluster from VMM. So in VMM 2007, if you use VMM 2000, 2008, you could actually have a cluster and then add it to VMM. But in VMM 2012, now we have an option to create the cluster right through VMM. You don't even need to install the feature, like failover clustering feature on the nodes. We install that for you. So everything is automated in VMM. So in order to do that, you basically come to create Hyper-V cluster. There's a wizard. And I'm just going to name it cluster 1. And you can select the run as account. In this case, I'm just going to select the domain run as account that I have for this domain. And this service that I want to use is under here. So just one thing to note in here, as you remember, I kicked off the bare metal deployment, and this is actually the server that I kicked off. But we actually create a temporary, like a server in here, but it hasn't completed yet. It hasn't been 35 minutes yet. So that's why you see it in here, but you don't see it in here because it's actually not completed. So one, thing that I'm going to do, and it's not recommended, but you can actually skip the cluster validation test, and for this to take 3 minutes, I need to do that. But it's you have an option in the UI, and I'm selecting the host nodes to cluster, and I forgot to create storage LUNs. So I go to the storage section. In Hector session, in other sessions, we actually show that we can actually create this we can add now storage devices to VMM. And the good thing about this is that we have this Dell compellent storage in here. And once you connect that storage, you can just create LUNs. And I'm actually going to create two LUNs to be able to use in this demo. One is called LUN 1, which is going to be for the, and you can see we are creating now. And I'm creating another one called LUN 2. And I'm going to use this for witness disk. Once they're created, they actually go to the, it basically shows us as 1. Now I'm waiting for this to show as 1. Now it's actually created. Now that these are created, now I can allocate this capacity to my host group, which was development. And these servers are under there. So here are the LUNs that I just created on this Dell compellent storage. Okay. Now, if we go back to our cluster section, you will see those LUNs appear. So I'll quickly go and select again the same nodes, skip the cluster validation. Now that you see the LUNs. One good thing that we actually provided here, as you can see, we automatically select the smallest one for the witness disk. And you have lots of options. You can give a volume label. One other good tip is that if you right-click this column, you can actually see some other things that we don't. We chose not to show this in the UI because of the UI limitation. But you get like lots of information in anywhere in the VMM UI. If you just try right-clicking the column label, you have like lots of information that you can add to especially in the main UI. So the force format, what it does is that if we detect on that LUN that you created, if we detect like some, data, we don't want to we actually don't format it. We complete the cluster creation process, but we complete it with a warning saying, we didn't format the drive. But you can actually force it. So this is basically just forces it. Even if just tells VMM, even if you find data, just go ahead and format it. This is what it does. And you can on the fly convert it to CSV2. So we actually do that. So this is, if you select that, we actually make it a CSV. One other thing we do is we actually look at all the nodes that you provided. I just provided 2 nodes. We look at all the nodes and which networks they are connected to. And you can say, you know what, I actually want to create a virtual switch. So we go to each host and, we create a virtual switch for that. So you don't have to do that one by one. And we kick it. And so basically, the cluster creation runs. If you look at the job real fast, you can see that the install cluster creation is going. And you can actually get a really good information in this view, how what the process is going on. We actually do a lot of things in here. In cluster creation, you can see all the different things that we actually do in here. For demo purposes, I actually had failover clustering feature added. So that's why you don't see that you see that as completed. But if it wasn't, it would just show the the installation and everything there. And while we're here, let's check back the host process, the bare metal deployment. It's going. It is, and you can see, you can follow where it is. Right now, it's booting. It boots 3 times. So right now, I think it's in this last boot because after the last boot, we installed the VMM agent. So this is basically where it is. And we can actually see it in here. I actually have this in the ILO. So you can see that it's booting right now. It takes 5 minutes to boot. So that's why, it depends on the hardware, really, how much time you get. In this hardware, we've seen 35 minutes and it's been already 26 minutes. So we have another 10 minutes. Okay. So after Annie's demo, we'll come back to this and then see if it's finished. And then if it's finished, we can drop this to cluster to add it to as another node to cluster. So that's the idea. But hopefully, it will finish by that time. Okay, guys. So that's all I have. And so as a Fabric admin, now that I have this environment, I basically, and Annie is going to play the role of a delegated admin. So we actually created the delegated admin role in here. And for the scenario, I actually went ahead and said, okay, Annie, you're actually in this, you own the development host group and everything under it. So in this case, he's going to see everything under development. He can do everything. The difference between the full admin and delegated admin is that delegated admin has the full capability, but under only the scope that you provided.
Thank you, Karim. So now that the full administrator has given the delegated admin, which will be me, some resources, I can go back to my machine, and what I can do is log in onto the admin console with my credentials. And in 2012, what we allow is also the admin console, the ability to log in as any kind of user, whether it's a delegated admin or a self-service user. You can all log in and use the admin console. So here I log in. And what's going to happen is that it's going to open up the admin console with my credentials and pull in the scope and the resources that got assigned to me by the full administrator as per this role. The reason it's showing this here is twice is because the group where this Contoso/cloud DA user is also part of an admin group. So that's why it allowed me to show to choose, by the way, which role do you want to play in VMM. And I chose that I want to play a cloud delegated administrator role. And as you see, if I go to my VMs and services, all I see is the development cloud assigned to me. I see the cluster that that the full administrator Karim just created. I see these nodes inside them. I go to the fabric. Likewise, my fabric, I've got access to the library servers, the Pixie servers. My scoping-wise, I can also scope the storage, the LUNs that are available to the delegated admin, and the networking networks, IP addresses. All of those are scopable. So the first thing I'm going to do as a delegated administrator is going to go create a cloud. And the way we are going to do that is we're going to go to VMs and services and say create cloud. Now let's call this MMS demo cloud. Okay, because now I got some resources, and what I want to do is I want to share the resources or make them available as a cloud to my users. It could, for example, it could be a finance department or a company for that matter. So I give it some name here, and then I go ahead and choose what resources I want underneath this cloud to be available. And from the development cloud, this was the only scope given to me right now, so that's all I can see. So I give this resources to them. I can choose the logical networks. In this case, I'll choose Contoso. Logical networks, I can choose, okay, there's a load balancer. Yes, I want a load balancer there. I can choose some VIP profiles. This allows me to configure my load balancer if I want to deploy a service on that cloud. These are the storage assigned to me. It's a tier 2 storage. I'll take that. Library. So here I can choose, like, for the users of this cloud, where can they store their VMs, and the stored VM path I have a share here that I can use for that. And then their read-only resources as a cloud admin, what I can do is I can provide a read-only share where I can publish some gold templates or VHDs that everybody in the cloud can use, can read, but it can't modify. So I choose that. Next, I go to capacity. Now, this is where the fun begins. Now, as an administrator, I can really now slice and dice what is available in to my users. So I can say, okay, the number of CPUs, I can restrict them to let's say, the numbers that you can choose from based on the capacity underneath it, right? And I can say, okay, don't care about it right now. Memory, I do want to restrict the memory. I don't want 256. Maybe I'd want 128. And storage, quota points. Quota is also another way in which you can limit the usage of your capacity underneath it. And I think one of the easiest way to limit capacity is just by the number of virtual machines. So you can say, hey, in this cloud, the total number of virtual machines that can get created is 8, right? And so that's it. And no matter how many users or who else uses the cloud, only 8 virtual machines can be created here. So go ahead and do that. Capability profiles here, I'm choosing that this cloud, what is the backing fabric behind this cloud in terms of the hypervisor? And it can be mixed, and in this case, it is Hyper-V only, so I can choose that, okay, this is a Hyper-V base. That means templates would require to be Hyper-V as well. And that's it. So with that, what we do is we create a cloud. Now, if I go into my clouds, I can see that there's an MMS demo cloud just got created. And now that the cloud is created, I want to assign it out. I'm going to say assign cloud. I can go here, I can go to the ribbon and just say assign cloud. So it says this cloud did I already choose that? Maybe I did. Okay, let's just check the properties and see who is this cloud assigned to. And no, give me a second. So in user roles, before I assign this, I need to create a user role. I'm going to create a user role for a self-service user, and we're going to call it demo self-service user role. Self-service user role. And in this is a self-service user role, and the member for this, I can add a domain users to it. It is cloud SSU. Okay. And the scope of it, I can give this user the scope of my cloud. We just created a couple of minutes back. And here's another way in which you can limit the usage of the cloud. You can limit it at the user role level, and you can also limit it at the user in that user role, so per user or per user role. So basically, I got, as a dedicated admin, some capacity got assigned to me. I can carve that capacity into different clouds. Once that cloud is there, I can assign that cloud to a user role, and I can give that user role a particular capacity. The user role could be, for example, all developers or all finance, right? And inside the user role, I can add different users, user A, user B, user C, and I can further allocate the capacity per user. Or user A gets allows to get created 2 VMs, but user B can create 10, right? So you get this fine level of control on who and how your cloud is getting used and how much. So in this case, at the user role level, let's say, so at the cloud, we set the virtual machines to 8, and at the user role, I want to say, hey, you can only do 6. And at the user, I can further restrict this to let's say 5, right? So this is just an example to show you how I can keep going down and restricting the quota for usage. So in terms of here resources, now I can also say that for this particular user role, what all they can do in this cloud. And here's the concept of VM templates and service templates that are available in the library. I can scope them to this particular user role. And so here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow these users to only be able to create a Contoso expense manager service. So I'm going to give them only access to that one service. That's it. And the underlying resources for this services also get appropriately ACLed. So I give them this. And if I wanted to, I can also give them a user role data path where they can store their own user-specific files. I'm not going to give them right now anything here. And in this particular page, what we get to is like what all actions those users can do on that cloud. So I can create multiple user roles assigned to the same cloud. And even in between those different user roles, I can allow that, okay, user role A, which is, let's say, finance, can start and stop VMs inside this cloud, while user role B, which may be HR, can only read or can only, create them. So things like, so that level of control, fine granularity control I have here. And in this case, I'm going to give them all permissions. So they can basically, remote connection, shutdown, share, all of these actions are available for the users of this role on this cloud. I can assign them run as accounts. This run as accounts is an ability for them to use predefined credentials for their work. They don't have access to those credentials, but they can impersonate based on these credentials that are exposed to them. So I can give them local run as account access so that they can use these credentials to do work. And that's it. The user role gets finished. As the user role gets created, we created a cloud, we created a user role, we gave them a scope, and we kind of constricted the use of what they can do in this cloud. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to log in as a self-service user and show you what his or her view is when they come into this console. Now that the capacity has been given out, I'll call up and say, hey, you asked for some capacity, it's ready for you, go ahead and see what you can do with it now. So I'll open my admin console. I'm going to get into my cloud SSU role, sign in, and so here in this demo, you're going to see the admin UI from the administrator's point of view, from the delegated administrator's point of view, and finally as a self-service user. And as this logs on, this is SSU role. We are here, and as you can see, I can see some clouds. Oh, what cloud got assigned to me? MMS demo cloud. Bingo, that's the cloud that got assigned to me. What can I do here? I wanted to create a service. Okay, let's go ahead and show you how we can create a service now. So if I look at library, in templates, I should be able to see only the Contoso expense manager assigned to me. Okay, so let's go back to VMs and services and create, actually deploy a service. I want to say create a service. I want to use an existing template. Yes. I want to choose this one. And do you want to go check if your machine is back so we can drag it?
Yeah, we can check that out. One thing to notice here is that you don't see the fabric. So the self-service user, you actually don't have the visibility on the fabric. And all the error messages and everything that they get, if it was like just, if it's the host name is there, we actually like hide all the, like names and everything. So they have no concept of, where their things are running.
Yeah, so thanks for reminding me that, Karim. But the cloud really just makes your fabric invisible to the user. So you don't have any access or any view into what host or what's the host name where your workload is running. And even the error messages don't contain any of those information. Yeah. And we actually use identifiers which you can then send back to your Fabric administrator, in which case if you have some trouble, so they can use that as a key to figure out what the real problem is. Mm-hmm. So let's say, let me just go back to the administrator console real quick and see if the machine got.
While Ani is doing that, I also wanted to mention, if you use VMware 2008 R2, you would notice that self-service users don't actually have a way to log into the UI. But in 2012, we added that capability. So now you can, as you can see, you can actually log into the UI, which you get like lots of like rich, you can actually run PowerShell command. If you click on the PowerShell, you can run, as the self-service user, you can automate, you can script, all those things. You get this rich experience as a self-service user now. Or you can use, obviously, the app controller UI. If you wanted if you wanted just to give them a web experience, like web UI experience, you can just use the app controller, which we recommend to use.
So the machine is now ready and available.
It is?
And
how long did it take?
It took.
Yeah, let me just look at the job. So one thing to also like mention in here is that, as you can see in the UI, you have you have a job section in here and also jobs like a shortcut in the ribbon. And one good tip to provide is that in this section, you actually see every job, like refresh jobs, like all the like it's a lot of lists. But this is actually like to your context. So this is like what I ran, and this is actually so it's a very short list. And if you go to the other one, you might be lost. Like where is my job? And because there are maybe like 50 refresh jobs if you have a big environment like these hosts refresh. So the new. It took 34 minutes. Okay. So yeah, exactly. So what we can do now is, so one other thing to mention in here is that we, while we're doing the bare metal deployment, we look at all the network cards, of the machine, and we try to see, like if we can match, like based on the DNS suffix or, whatever you have provided in your environment, if we can actually have the logical networks, lined up. And let's see actually like the properties of this machine, and if you were able to find that or not. So if you go to the hardware, you actually see all the network adapters. And if we see this network adapters, these are actually, you remember like when we created this cluster, they were under Contoso. So I want to see if any of the network cards we identified as Contoso. And looks like the one that got the IP address, that's the one that we want. This one actually got the IP address, but we couldn't. So this is where it was connected. So all I need to do is I just need to connect it to Contoso. And after that, now I'm ready to go. Now all I can do is, there are a couple of ways of doing it. You can actually add it to the node by just right-clicking it, or you can just go and drag and drop it. And this is what we showed in the keynote. So you say the domain account. I can still skip the cluster validation test. And as you know, for all the wizards, we made sure in VMM 2012 that we provided it everywhere. So if you don't know, if you wanted to script this, and if you didn't know which command to run, you can just click on vscript, and you get exactly what we are going to run, right? So you can just copy paste this, put it in the library as a script, and then right-click and run it. So I think it's an awesome way to find out. So now that it's actually running, we don't put it under the cluster unless the job is finished. So the job is kicked off. It will take as much as the install cluster job took, which is 251. It's going to be 2 minutes and 2.5 minutes, something like that. At least that's what we saw when we were doing the practicing.
So the interesting thing here is also as a self-service user, I could have been deploying some workload on the capacity available to me and realized that, hey, it failed because I don't have enough capacity, and I could easily go back to my admin and say, hey, I need more capacity, and the administrator in the backend would do exactly this. They'll bring in a new server, bring it online, put it in their cluster, change your quotas, and there you go. You have extra capacity available right there. Mm-hmm. So now coming back to your self-service, as a self-service user, we were trying to go deploy the service that got assigned to me, and you can give this a name. You can say demo service, and provided a destination. There's only one destination available for me. And what it's going to do is it opens up that service template that got assigned and opens up the customization view so we can walk through and how it's done. And as it pops in, it says that, hey, things don't seem right right now, so you can't deploy as is. There's some issues that you need to resolve. And what's saying particularly here is that the parameter computer name has not been specified. So, okay, let's go fix that. And here the computer name has not been specified. So I'm going to just basically choose my computer name as the original one with demo. So just to talk a little bit, to give a little bit of overview of what services are like. This is your, how do you say, this is like a blueprint of your service. This tells you what your name of your service is, how many tiers there are. There are 3 tiers to this service. There's a front tier, which can contain your web deploy packages. There's a SQL tier, which can contain your SQL packages, and then there's a middle business layer, right? So you can compose your service as a one-tier or multi-tier application, and then you can do all the settings inside this designer so that everything is available for you and to deploy when the time comes. So this kind of makes it really easy to manage multiple VMs instead of everyone together, everyone one at a time. You can manage multiple VMs that participate in providing one service all at one time. And we can say deploy service. Because we scoped it down to that cloud where we are deploying, internally it's going to go figure out on what actual hosts inside that cloud that service needs to go, because ultimately the VMs need to go reside on some hosts. And in the event it doesn't find anything, it will pop up your errors, not exposing against the fabric, but telling you, giving you enough information about what you need to do next. In this case, it was able to go find some resources, and this job takes about 20 minutes, so we're not going to wait here for this job to complete, but just wanted to show this to you. And
let's see if the cluster node finished.
Node, yes.
Is it still going on? The jobs. It's still going on. Yeah, right now it installed the failover clustering feature. As you know, like it was a bare metal deployed machine, right? So it didn't have the failover clustering feature enabled. So that's why it's going to take more than the, because the other machines were already installed. So now it's basically going through. The good thing about that is like it actually looks at the virtual networks. Now that you know, like you remember we created this like virtual switch called Corp. It actually like going to create the same virtual switch bounded to the same node. So it looks at all the cluster and it replicates, you know, all the configurations to the new node. So that's like one convenient way. You don't have to go through each node. Like imagine if you have 16 nodes, you don't have to go through each node. Like this actually configures everything for you.
So we're not going to wait for this to finish. You'll have to trust us that this does finish and gets added into the cluster.
It's actually almost done.
It's almost done, yes.
Yeah.
Going back to the slides for a second. So we're just going to talk about what all we covered, just to recap. And so covered the GC. So this is where the delegated admin came in after the fabric was structured, created some clouds, allocated some capacity, created some services, and those are up and running. And this is basically with System Center 2012, the ability for us to manage your fabric, to be able to create, allocate, configure your data centers has never been easier. And there are tons of tips and tricks that you will learn when you start working on it, and they're all on community sites as well. Yeah. And we encourage you to go use this product and
it's completed. Let's
see
show this
how it goes. Yes. This is 4.
Yeah. Yeah, now that it's under the cluster. One other actually like cool thing about like if you right click cluster, you can, you know, since we didn't run the validation test, right? You can actually do the run the validation test, you know, on demand afterwards. So that's another nice thing, you know. We allow you to do that, you know, and also we also allow you to. We provided a lot of good information. So you see that, you know, it says the validation has been run, and if it was run, the other good thing that we do is like we show you the link to the report on one of the nodes. So, and it's clickable, so you just click on it and then you get the full report. You don't have to go to the node and open up the report and find out the report. So everything will be here.
Okay. We have a few minutes. I know you guys must be like raining to get back to wherever you guys are going. We have a few minutes. If you have some questions, we'll be glad to answer them, please.
And if you can, we were told to ask you to use the microphones because we're recording it, so it would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So how would you recommend handling naming standards in a large enterprise environment?
I couldn't hear that.
How would you recommend handling naming standards in a large enterprise environment? It's, you know, a great idea to push some of this out to the app owners to build their own stuff, but enforcing naming standard, I can't have servers named Steve, you know, running around in my enterprise. So
the question is, if I get this right, how do we handle naming for the servers in the data center?
Naming?
Yeah,
oh, I see.
Server namings.
Of the guest operating systems? So what is the best practice? What is the recommendation? Or what I'm trying to understand.
So in case of like services, we have the ability to auto-generate the names. So you can put the special keys like hash keys and 3 hash keys. So it will automatically generate. So you can say, okay, this is my VMs for this particular service called X. And you can call it service X hash 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 as the name. So when you deploy it, the System Center VMM will automatically determine the names that, okay, 01 is already deployed, let me choose 02 or 03, and it will create those VM structures for you.
And usually what we see is like people, you know, the naming conventions, they basically use, it depends on each organization and how their IT is like considering their, like, some of them are like named basically geographical, some of them are departmental. So it really changes a lot. That's what we see at least. I hope it answered your question. Any other questions?
Yes, please.
On the fabric for storage, if you're not using SMIS, how do you determine the naming stuff for it?
So the storage section, you mean?
Yeah, for the fabric, if you're just using iSCSI without the ability to have SMIS connected to storage, how do you allocate that to your nodes?
Oh, so this basically, so what you do is, so this was a storage array that, the storage array configuration is actually, you don't do the storage array configuration in VMM. We basically have this, you basically finish your configuration on the storage section, and then you basically add it to, as a, into VMM from here. And once you do that, we basically show you all the arrays that we see, we detect. And one thing you can do in VMM is you can actually create classifications and put those arrays under the classifications. And we basically get the same names that was specified in the storage array. That's basically, so this assigned, the array name, we actually picked it up from the Dell storage.
So we only refresh it.
Yeah, we refresh it. You cannot name it. You cannot name it from VMM. But you can, obviously, you're creating the LUN, so you can name all your LUNs you want. Can you, I cannot hear the microphone.
Can you manually add without having to require SMIS? Do you require SMIS?
Yes, we require SMIS. So
The question is, can we add the arrays manually, or do we require SMIS? We do require SMIS at this point.
Yeah. And we work with a lot of storage partners like Hector. Linares actually covered this in great detail. So if you haven't been to his talk, he has a really, really deep dive into storage and how we use SMIS and which, storage partners we work with, which, we tested, which PlugFest we went to. So we have a really good number of storage partners that we work with that supports, like this. Any other questions? We are here. We can take your questions also, if you wanted to come here. Thank you so much for attending
Thank you so
our
much.
session. I hope it was useful.
That was good.